Hello and welcome to Atop the Light Bulb where bad lamps burn out. Round 3, people! I've been too kind these last few months. We're going back to our old standard of garbage! The Target $20 lamp! Let's do this!
Meanwhile, in a parallel universe...
Today's movie, The Murder Mansion, is a Spanish-Italian co-production that really wants to be an Italian giallo movie, but is instead a riff on the old dark house subgenre. The movie was directed by Francisco Lara Pollup, a Spanish writer and director known for making various nudie comedies or horror movies, including Climax, Perversion, and National Adultery. Gee, I wonder if this horror movie featuring mysterious murders around a rich person's house will feature sex and adultery. Okay, maybe I'm being unfair here about the plot. Maybe this is actually a secret Godzilla movie that I'm surprising you all with, since you've all been wanting another one, even though Toho really doesn't want me to do that. The Murder Mansion's original title in Spanish, La Mansión de la Niebla, actually translates to The Fog Mansion. I knew it! The fog was the killer the whole time! We opened with where the censors put a few of the scenes when they edited this for TV. I'm not kidding. The most prolific cut of this movie is one that deleted all the nudity so that it could be aired on TV. I've got 2 copies of this movie. One a VHS rip that's somehow 3 minutes shorter than the other. I'll be damned if I'm gonna watch this movie at least 2 times, one in worse quality, to see what they cut out. Aside from the sides of the film for 4x3 TVs, as well as a higher quality print. Neither has nudity in them, and there are clearly shots where there's supposed to be nudity, but it cuts away before showing it. We really open on this guy in sunglasses driving around going to... Soren? The movie really wants us to know he's going there since it zooms in on this sign. He passes by a guy on a motorcycle, honking to get past him. And apparently he rented his car from clowns. Offended by this honking, motorcycle guy tries to tail him only for the continuity to be screwed up as his goggles teleport back onto the helmet when he had just pulled them down. And then his car transforms into Herbie the Love Bug. No, of course, this is just another car that they pass in this chase scene, I guess. It contains 2 more characters for the movie, since, as an old dark house movie, we need to have a bunch of characters all converging on the same place. This little game of whose dick is bigger, or who's the biggest dick, is about 3 minutes long. Come on, the movie is called Murder Mansion, not Murder the Traffic Laws. Until they come across a hitchhiker. Both stop for her, but she opts for the car. I'd say given some shots of the countryside feature snow and she's wearing a short skirt, she made the right call there, but Sunglasses Guy is a pervert trying to feel her up. Listen, ass, gas, or grass is only acceptable if you ask first, jerk. Then again, maybe they're having a conversation telepathically because it's 6 minutes into the movie before we hear a single line of dialogue from anyone. The motorcyclist asking for a beer. I sympathize. The motorcyclist, Fred, runs into the hitchhiker again, whose name is Laura. She admits she's regretting her choice to get in with Touchy McSunglasses, named Mr. Porter, no first name offered anywhere. Fred offers to take her with him instead.
Just a minute. This young lady is riding with me.
Convincing argument, dude. Porter just says that something will happen if she goes with him, but something already happened. He tried to grope her like an asshole. The couple in the other car, the Tremonts, arrive at a big house, though not the murder mansion, more like the mildly annoying mansion, and grumble about the other people there.
Usual nobodies who think they're somebody.
You know, people who make videos on the internet. Apparently Mrs. Tremont, yeah, once again, no first names for these two, is the widow of Mr. Tremont's old law partner and married him right after. They're here to meet with Elsa, a rich woman waiting for her husband to come home and sign some legal documents concerning... The movie is called Murder Mansion. We have had a little of one and not any of the other. Said husband is waylaid in Soren waiting for another lawyer, and we see that Fred and Laura are at the same restaurant as him.
We're here. In Soren.
You guys are still in Soren and you stopped for food again? Are the IHOPs in this town just that good? Fred gets some directions from the bar about which road to take to the next town.
The new highway and the old road. Which is the better? The old one's much shorter, but
that one doesn't have as many boobs, obviously. Elsa's husband, Ernest, is actually having an affair with a woman, and we learn that he's staying with Elsa because of her money.
I have a fortune of my own.
Yes, you did 10 years ago, but you threw it all away on drink and women.
Speaking of, that'll be $200. I'm kidding. She actually says she loves the guy and is confused why Elsa doesn't treat him better. Well, just a thought, but maybe because he keeps wasting money on booze and women that aren't her? Ernest drops some backstory about Elsa being in charge of her father's fortune now that said father is dead, and I guess we're front-loading all this backstory for all these characters right now, so that later in the movie we can have non-stop action and murder in a mansion, right? Spoilers! Nope. You know, sometimes kissing in movies is just mashing two faces together and hoping for the best. Ernest's car apparently broke down and Elsa is gonna go pick him up. The Tremont's saying they'll follow her so they can get all the documents done with that night. Fred and Laura, meanwhile, get lost and can't read their map in the day for night. They try to flag down a passing car, but the guy almost runs Fred down. Probably because he and Laura are the most likable people in the movie so far. It's okay, though. They can't read the map, but they can definitely memorize his license plate. The Tremonts get lost in the fog while following Elsa's car, which somehow looks much brighter and clearer than the day for night shots. They get into a car accident with Mr. Porter. Oh no, they'd better call a lawyer! Oh wait. Elsa, meanwhile, is equally lost in the fog and thinks that wiping the inside of her windshield while the wipers are still going will somehow clear it. And finally, Fred and Laura enter the fog too. Man, everyone's so lost in this stuff that even the Grim Reaper can't find his way out.
Hello there. Can I help you?
Okay, I guess they found death on his off day. The two get directions from the guy while Elsa got into a car crash too. After ineffectually poking at the engine for a minute, she goes walking around to find a cemetery and a big silhouette in the distance.
Who are you? Get away from me, for God's sake!
Don't worry, Elsa, that's just Tor Johnson filming his bits for Plan 9 from Outer Space in this cemetery. The big guy in the chauffeur hat is soon joined by the silhouette of a woman, and they slowly advance on her. Actually, this honestly is one of the more effective scenes in the movie. The fog, the silhouettes, how slowly they move while Elsa screams to leave her alone. It's pretty spooky, even if it took us 18 minutes to get to it. Curses, foiled by an ankle-high hole in a wall. Fred and Laura get into an accident as well. Okay, I was joking earlier, but I guess the fog really is the killer in this movie, given how it keeps causing car crashes.
I keep getting the feeling that we're on another planet.
Great, first Giallo and Old Dark House, but now it's sci-fi too? Well, after a motorcycle crash, the best thing to do is to make out. Unfortunately for them, they get cock-blocked by Elsa running into them. While they look for signs of civilization together, they find the car that almost ran over Fred, abandoned so they can't exchange insurance information, the bastards, as well as the murder mansion we've been waiting for this whole time. And there's Mr. Porter packing a gun to make the place live up to that name. Don't worry, he's just answering the door like that because Comcast keeps trying to sell him phone lines. The Tremonts are there as well, but this isn't Porter's house. According to them, the chauffeur that Elsa spotted was trying to break into the house and he ran off. So they broke into the house instead? But yeah, chauffeur, eh?
Boots to the knees.
Boots, you said?
Oh no! Boots! No, they didn't break in. The actual owner of the house, Martha, helped them out after the car accident and is happy to let them stay the night.
There are only 3 bedrooms available, however, and I'm afraid they haven't been aired for some time.
Smelly orgy it is then. No, what's more important is more exposition about how Martha owns the house but doesn't regularly live here. That the village around the cemetery is abandoned because of vampire legends. That's not even me joking. We're 29 minutes in and suddenly vampires have entered the old dark Giallo sci-fi movie. They hear noises coming from the cellar door, but Martha says she bolted the door because she saw a rat in there.
Well, if that's a rat, it's a damn big one.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist. There's a portrait of Martha's Aunt Julia that Elsa suspects was the woman she saw in the graveyard.
My aunt was a very eccentric woman. She was a witch, so they say.
And now witches? Can this movie please decide what horror subgenre it is already? She says her aunt used to employ a tall man who also was her chauffeur, but said chauffeur got drunk one night and drove them into a wall outside the cemetery. Elsa has a panic attack at the idea that she may have seen 2 ghosts. At this rate, just add a werewolf and the Frankenstein monster if we're going to bring every possible horror subgenre into this. Mr. Tremont explains that Elsa has been having panic attacks like that ever since her father had a heart attack.
He was in his daughter's bed with a young girlfriend of hers from college when he died.
Oh my god, why didn't they call this movie La Mansión de la Exposición?
Feeling better now?
Sort of, I just keep seeing establishing shots for some reason. Pervy McPorter asks Elsa and Martha if there's anything he can do to help. You know, if he can grope them or anything. Since they say no, he goes back to his room to redecorate all the weird metal album covers that Martha's aunt collected. In the living room, Fred and Laura are moving the coffee table. La Mansión de la Redecorating! Martha gives them some blankets, and then... This movie seems to think that horror is just randomly zooming in on things with ominous music. Well, hey, maybe there's some horror to be found in Porter's room. Nope, never mind. He's really disappointed he can't go to Narnia instead of be in this movie. Maybe I spoke too soon about Fred being likable, because he decides to go investigate the locked cellar door because he wants to find out what's going on, even though this isn't his house and the woman who does own it asked you not to. Inside, they find claw marks in the door to indicate the rat story was a lie, but maybe they really are adding in a werewolf. And enough of that scene, how about these two have sex instead? Hey honey, nothing gets me in the mood faster than finding out we're stuck in a big house next to a graveyard and our host is lying to us and there's a big creature with claws that was scratching at the door to the basement. And hey, at least Porter can get his perv on by watching us later. Meanwhile, Elsa has a flashback to that incident with her dad, where we learn the true horror of this movie, that she used to wear horrible wigs. However, the flashback gets interrupted by Porter, who decides to come in and continue to be creepy by offering her booze.
You mean you really want me to go?
Yes.
I'm trying to have a flashback here, asshole! He says he always knew there was something off about her. You met her like an hour ago.
I never bother with women who despise men.
Is it that she's a lesbian, or is it that you are a creeper, dude? Anyway, back to the flashback. She's of course pissed that her dad's interested in a girl her age, but he reminds her that Ernest is kind of an ass too. Still, she reconnects with Ernest at the flashback party, and even spots her dad making out with the girl in his car. Anyway, time for some more not nudity before the flashback ends. Let's see, who else can I drunkenly hit on, be creepily horny at, and then get swiftly rejected? Ah, Martha. Martha actually seems receptive, weirdly enough, but she's got kinks of her own. She likes to have the chauffeur watch. Porter spots the chauffeur, only for him to have a heart attack out of fear. 54 minutes into The Murder Mansion, and the first kill is less a murder and more an accident. Laura woke up to find Fred gone and the cellar door wide open, so she decides to go take a look by herself with only a tiny candle. She even finds some meat hooks hanging up in the damp, dark cellar and decides to keep going deeper. Laura does not make good decisions. Oh no, that painting is so tacky! Fred finds her, but instead of saying hello like a normal person, he grabs her from behind and puts his hand over her mouth. And no, he's not secretly the killer or something. He just really thought that was the best way to say hi.
I'm sorry, but how the hell was I to know it was you?
I thought I was grabbing some stranger from behind. He found that the cellar tunnels lead to an old family crypt and chapel, but we've got more important things to worry about now. Another Elsa exposition flashback. And if that wasn't bad enough, she has a weird flashback within a flashback of her dad and Ernest both talking about how, as men, they're imperfect. And then suddenly Ernest is complaining because she doesn't want to have sex right now. I think. They don't actually say it.
It's you who's destroying our marriage. It's your fault, Elsa.
And your cheating obviously has nothing to do with it. Martha comes in to check on her, and this might just be a glitch in my copy of the movie, but for a second, the shot of Martha standing over her is suddenly in the movie and then disappears. I checked the VHS rip of the movie to see if it was there too, and while it's not, there is a weird cut in that version that's missing a few frames. Maybe there was more nudity there, since it implies that Martha wants to hate men with Elsa, if you get my meaning. Back in the crypt, Fred and Laura discover Martha's aunt's coffin, but it's empty.
Do you think the vampire was her aunt?
Has this movie just been a prequel to Resident Evil Village this whole time? Meanwhile, Elsa looks over at Martha. Yeah! Thanks, movie. It only took you an hour, but something legit scary finally happened. Look, Elsa, people look different without makeup on. There's no need to be such a drama queen about it. Ow! Girl Scout cookies! Pursued by Julia, Elsa runs into the crypt to find Mrs. Tremont dead and hanging from a hook. She passes out, accidentally starting a fire too. We're more than 2/3 of the way through the movie, and it has finally become a murder mansion. Fred and Laura have left the crypt and find themselves in the cemetery again, and seemingly get shot at by Mr. Porter. However, when they get closer, they discover that he's been dead for a while, and are soon accosted by Julia and the chauffeur. Although he also says Porter's gun was fired recently. So what, did the chauffeur hide the body, shoot at them, then run away, and then turn around and start walking menacingly at them? Fred is about to shoot them, but Porter's body falls over to distract them. And suddenly the ghosts are gone. And it's a good thing that those two are really ghosts, or else this wouldn't make any sense. They bring Porter's body back to the house and meet up with Martha and Mr. Tremont, who reports that Elsa and his wife are missing. Smelling the smoke from the cellar, they find Elsa and the dummy they hung up that's supposed to be Mrs. Tremont. While Mr. Tremont passes out from shock, Fred takes Elsa back upstairs, and Laura is told to flail at the fire a bit to try to put it out. However, to further complicate this plot, the man in black from Halloween 5 suddenly shows up and goes into the crypt. Fred decides to leave, supposedly to try to get to Miller and get medical help for Elsa, but instead doubles back and goes in the house's garage to find the car that had been crashed earlier. Laura and Elsa are soon being menaced by Julia and the floating head of Mrs. Tremont. And while we didn't actually see the head getting cut off, I still feel compelled to make the reference. Decapitation! However, maybe I'm using it too soon, because they flee into where the Tremonts were sleeping, only to find Mrs. Tremont alive and groggy from some sleeping pills she took. Wow, so don't I look like an asshole for commenting that the dead body looked like a dummy, when that's exactly what it was. Fred finds a Halloween sound effects tape, and we discover that this is actually a stealth granny porn movie. Nah, actually the ghost was really Martha in a mask the whole time. Fred is attacked by the chauffeur, and a kick to the face reveals that he's wearing a mask too. Of course, it was that guy! Turns out the floating head of Mrs. Tremont was actually just Mr. Tremont while he's cosplaying a judge. Hey, dress for the job you want to have, not the one you currently have. I do wonder who he got to make that. Yeah, I want a bloody mask of my wife's face, please. I'm probably divorcing her. This whole thing was a scheme to drive Elsa insane, and they assume the others will be locked up too when they start talking about vampires and corpses shooting at them. The chauffeur was a guy named Igor, and the man in black was paying them this whole time to do this. And he shows up to kill them all.
No!
Ah, bullets. His one weakness. And the mastermind behind it all? Ernest, who plants the guns on them all to make it look like they killed each other. Fred recovers from the ass-kicking he got from the chauffeur and comes back to the house. God, it's like a more murderous version of that meme from Community. Fred gets Laura, and they decide to flee to the police, leaving the other two because, well, Elsa's a nervous wreck, and Mrs. Tremont has slept through most of the movie anyway. A very confused Elsa comes down the stairs, grabs one of the guns, and shoots Ernest, hallucinating that it's her own father because I think she had more issues with her dad than just dating younger women. But hey, what about Fred and Laura? Oh, well, of course that's how it ends. More movies should just end abruptly on our main characters riding a motorcycle, freeze frame, Finn, and happy music. The Murder Mansion was apparently very successful in Spain, and I have to admit it has its merits, especially in the last half hour, but it takes quite a while for things to actually happen in the movie. We're front-loaded with a ton of exposition, yet the actual motive for Ernest to go through this complicated facade seems to just be drive Elsa insane because she won't sleep with me, and also because I want her money, probably. That's the thing. That motive is only implied because of all the exposition, but not outright stated, and that was so much earlier in the movie that you forgot about Ernest. And we don't know Mr. Tremont's motive or Martha's, assuming that's her real name. Hell, we don't know anything really about Fred or Laura other than they're nicer than everyone else in the movie. Elsa's backstory with her dad is played up as significant, especially with the flashbacks, but there's nothing there to show why she'd hallucinate him in place of Ernest at the end, unless there were scenes that were cut that explain it. It also seems like a lot of work was done to get these characters to this particular location that required a lot of luck, and the revelation that the chauffeur is just some guy named Igor feels random. Might have made more sense if he was actually the Grim Reaper guy we saw earlier. Sure, it'd make this plan even more convoluted and requires all these players to arrive at the same place at the same time, but it'd be better for the narrative than someone we've never seen before. The movie is certainly not lacking for atmosphere, with more fog than in John Carpenter's The Fog, and the horror scenes, when they actually happen, are suitably creepy and terrifying. But since they're shoved so far into the last part of the movie, they felt the need to add spooky, ominous music and slow zoom shots to things that aren't spooky or ominous at all. It's not a terrible movie, but a lot of the best stuff takes a while to get to. And really, why does it end on them on the motorcycle instead of the pullback from Elsa having the nervous breakdown? That's it for today's movie. Until next time, when we're not talking about a movie, I guess.